record this computer. There we go. Okay, so at this point, we're moving into our feature presentation, and we're going to be looking at interpersonal communications and overview. All right, so, and it's loading, and it's loading. There we go. All right, so interpersonal communications, essentially what we're looking at right now is chapter 1. And as we mentioned before, I know that not everyone has gotten a chance to read chapter 1 yet. So I'm going to be highlighting some of the most important things. And then as we wrap up this particular section, we're going to start looking at some of the homework assignments that you have for this weekend as well. Okay. Now with this, there's a little bit of interaction. So you're going to need to have a cell phone handy, and you're going to need to be able to chat with me too. If you have questions though, by all means, jump right in, shout them out. All right. And it froze. There we go. And we did that already. So let's go over what we talked about the other evening. And this is just one of those main concepts that I mentioned last week that was really important, okay? When we talk about interpersonal communications, there's a couple things to remember. First of all, this is a process. It's a process when you're talking from one person and interacting with another person, all right? It is to accomplish different goals. You are communicating with someone because you have a goal in mind. And finally, whoever you're communicating with, you have a relationship with that person. Doesn't matter how long or short it is. For example, we all have family, we have friends, we have significant others, we have loved ones, right? When you communicate with those people, first of all, there's a very distinct relationship there. And you have, there's a longevity, and there's weight, and there's meaning, and there's importance behind that relationship. But generally, you also have a goal beyond it. All right. I've spent a lot of today on text messages with my sisters because I mentioned to you earlier, we're trying to plan something for Mother's Day because our original plan fell flat. So there's a relationship there with my two sisters, and there's a goal. And that's why we are communicating with each other. And of course, we have a process back and forth. So whether it's text messages or sometimes via Snapchat or other social media, because we're all at a distance. Same thing works when you're talking about communicating with someone in a short term, all right? Say, for example, I think my example last week was you go to Dunkin' and you get a coffee, right? Yes, you've never seen this person before. And yes, it's a short transaction, but it's still interpersonal communication because there's a process. You walk up, you say, hi, how are you? They say, what can I get you? Whether it's in the drive-through or the walk-through, right? There's a goal, coffee, and there's a relationship, whether it's long-term or short-term. And that relationship is to interact with that individual. So every sort of interpersonal communication you have is going to have those three key factors. This process is going to be ongoing. It's constant. It's always happening. There are distinct goals. You can figure out what those goals are. You can stop and say, why am I talking to this person? What do I want from it? Sometimes it's, I want to buy something from you. And sometimes it's, I want friendship with you. I want warm, fuzzy feelings that I get from having a relationship with you. And then of course, that relationship does exist. There is a distinct relationship. All right, so let's talk about what it means to really look at interpersonal communications. First of all, very general definition for you. When you see inter refers to between. Personal is going to be pretty obvious, right? That refers to people. And communications emphasizes sending and receiving messages. Okay. Just to throw this out for you, inter is between, but I also want you to think about intra, I-N-T-R-A, and that is within. And that's important because next week we're going to be focusing on more intrapersonal relationships, more intrapersonal communications. And that is essentially how you as an individual understand and communicate with yourself.
You said intra, Professor?
Yep, inter, I-N-T-E-R is between. And let me see if I can throw it into the chat. Intra is INTR is within. Okay. And I'm just going to take a quick second. Hi, Christina. I do see you. We're just already into things. All right. All right. At its most basic level, this definition talks about didactic communication. And didactic is not something that I expect that is in your, normal everyday vocabulary. But when you think about a dyad, and again, I'm putting this in the chat for you, you're talking about two people. Okay. So it tends to emphasize only two people, but we know from our daily experience, heck, we know from right now, it's not always going to be just two people having that conversation. All right. And then again, our focus for this course is going to be personal relationships. So we're looking at those relationships between people and how we communicate in those relationships. All right. So that's really interpersonal communications in a nutshell. Those are kind of our goals. And just to give you some understanding of just some of those basic level terms. All right. So what we're going to start with is communication. What does communication look like? All right. And so what I'd like you to do, and this is where cell phones are going to be helpful. I put on the screen here, it says text Ellen Sweeter 538 to number 37607. All right. I'm going to have you text that. And what it's going to do once you text that is it's going to send you to a question. And you don't need the @ sign or anything. And this is not going to ask you to download an app. I know we talked about that earlier. Essentially, what we're doing is creating a word cloud. The question is asking you, what does communication look like? And as you answer, it's going to populate in a word cloud. Has everyone successfully gotten through the text part? Not yet. All right, I'll give it another second. And when you're answering, I encourage you to answer as many times as you want.
So it's saying you've joined the Ellen Swider text.
Yep. Yep, you got it. That's exactly what it should say.
Okay.
So just sit here, don't do anything.
No, give it a second.
I know one of my coworkers was trying to quit smoking and she was like,
Christina, I'm renaming you so I know who you are.
Thank you.
All right, escape just for a second. This is what it should have. What does communication look like? It looks like someone has already answered. They said socializing. All right.
oh, you wanted me to answer that question you asked?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, just text that answer to me. I went the wrong way. Hold on.
Can you go back to the question?
Absolutely. I clicked the wrong button. Sharing opinions, people relating. So it will refresh every few seconds, but take a second, add as many things as you want. There we go. And I realize with only, 6 or 7 of us, it's a little hard. And I too am adding some words in there. Communicate is coming up really big there.
Wait a minute. Was that
Yeah.
me?
You're gonna hold this in your hands when you get out.
What's up, Marzina?
They chopped up my communication text. I don't appreciate that.
Yeah, it does that. It's a word cloud, so it's going to take a lot of those. All right, I'm seeing some really interesting words come through now. Aliens, plants, humans.
That's me. That's me. That was me. That was me. See, what I said was I had said plants communicate, humans communicate, aliens communicate, the weather communicates, all in their own way. This thing,
Okay.
aliens, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I said.
I just threw in animals for you. Okay. Okay. So we have taken this and we honestly, this is great. If you're still responding, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off, but this is great. We have taken this and we've gotten very, intellectual with it, which is awesome. We're looking at, obviously communicates the big thing, which makes sense because you probably use it in your response a couple times. I see relating, I see trusting, socializing, compromising, conversing. I do see talking, texting, relationships. It says non-love. I wonder if that got corrected somehow.
Nonverbal.
I didn't put nine.
Oh, I see. Nonverbal and then love. They took it as two separate words. Gotcha.
Nonverbal.
Everyday
love, yes.
opinions, conversations. So it's pretty encompassing here. You've got a lot that it looks like. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to clear these responses. And what I'd like you to do now is to tell me, right? I'm clearing it right now, is now tell me like how do you communicate? What different ways do you communicate? The obvious one is going to be speaking. Someone said physical. There you go. There was some interesting ones there. Some very, very interesting ones. Anyone need to add anything else? Again, I realize it's okay, there we go. I wonder if we do nonverbal as one word, if that would help. I just did it myself. Yep, that kind of works. Whoops. All right. So language is a key thing there. I see language. I see a lot of physical and nonverbal communication, looks, touching, tone, physical expression. Let's see, laughing, facial, listening. Those are all more nonverbal ones. And then there's texting, emailing. No one put like telephone or computer, but those are other ways to communicate with people. And so in this case, what we're really looking at are different channels of communication. And so that's where we're going to go now. All right, new share, and we're going to go back to, whoops, escape. Hang on just a second. It's hard when you've got all these different tabs.
I got that Finding Nemo reference. I heard that. Escape.
Oh, I did that automatically. I didn't even think about Nemo. What can I say? I've got little kid. All right, there we go. And thank you for being patient for a second. So we're looking at different types of communication, different channels of communication. Okay. So channels of communication are pretty simple. Those are the ways that we communicate: talk, text, touch, speaking, listening, everything that you just listed on that last page. And so I just want you to be aware that it might be a style of communication, it might be a mode of communication, but that is a channel, is the key word that you're going to be looking at. So let's look at now at the different models of communication. And there are two different models that I'm going to share with you. This is the first one. And I invite you to go ahead and unmute yourself and just tell me what you see going on in this picture.
Two emojis communicating.
Okay.
I see a lot of distraction.
Right. Right. And you
There's-
see, yep, go ahead.
There's a sender and a receiver. So
Mhm.
someone who sends a message and the other person receives the message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so someone sending it and the other person receiving it is distracted.
Oh, yep, that part. The receiver isn't getting
The noise is closer to the receiver.
Sure. You know what? I never noticed that one was closer to one person than the other, but yeah, that's absolutely, that's fair. I mean, let's, I don't want to say that yet because it'll give away the big surprise. Okay. What else?
They both seem happy.
That's just a picture. Although the message is pretty simple. It just says hello. All right. So what we're looking at, this is a linear model of communication. And it's linear, think linear, straight line. You're moving from one person to the other. And everyone picked up on that pretty quickly. I've got two people. One person is saying something, that person is encoding that message in their head. They're thinking about what they want to say. They're saying it, whatever channel they're using. We can assume in this case that they're just speaking to each other. And then the other person is receiving that message. And so they receive that message and in their heads, they decode it and they try to figure out what is being said. All right. The catch is that as we mature, as we spend more time communicating with other people, we get better at understanding their messages, right? If someone says hello, you know what they're saying. If someone uses some sort of other greeting or other slang, eventually you're going to understand what it means and you'll be able to pick up on it really quickly. Okay. What makes this linear though is only one person is speaking. All right. And I think a lot of times we fall into this trap, especially in class. You know, a lot of times when you, whether it's an asynchronous class or it's a in-person class, you've got one person speaking. All right. A lot of this time you have been muted. That's what I'm trying to throw in, like text this and we'll make a word cloud, and chat this and we'll do this. But the reality is a lot of times that's a very linear model of communication. So now that you've showed me what's going on in this picture, what problems do you see with it?
That the communication is one direction. It's not going both ways.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. I totally just had a brain fart. It looks like one's dominant and one's not dominant. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. One person has control over the situation, the other person doesn't. Sure.
So would it be considered communication, seeing as how only one person, because communication was described as sending or receiving of information, but this is a
Right.
communication, one person is speaking.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great, Christina. Thanks for pointing that out.
Like
This
that
is,
person's being spoken at, they're not having a conversation
Mhm.
kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Here's the deal. Is it communication? It is still communication because this is something that we experience all the time. For example, if anyone is taking an online class, yes, we are online right now, but we're also synchronous, which means we're meeting right now every Thursday night at 6 p.m. We're here. If you're taking a purely online asynchronous class, you're just reading. You know, you're just reading whatever the professor put on Blackboard, you're just reading those assignments, and then that's it. And that's where it's a very linear model. Another example of a linear model of communication is you're driving or you're trying to travel somewhere and you're just looking at signs, and signs are giving you directions. Same thing. It's something's being communicated, right? I see that stop sign. I know I need to stop, but it's still a very linear model of communication. It is a legitimate way of communicating, though, to your point, Christina, it is still. A couple problems with it, though. It's definitely one-way communication. Senders receive the message, receivers receive the message only, and that's it. Doesn't go the other way around. And noise was something that we pointed out earlier. Noise is represented by those little yellow stars up there, but that is something that interferes with that message. And I think someone actually said, whoever the receiver is in the situation is distracted. All right, which is really a very, very good way of putting it. Driving in the car with my kid, you know, I like to have the radio on. She does not. She wants to hear a certain song over and over and over again. So what that means, if I play anything other than her one song, she starts screaming. Well, think of me as a driver then. Am I paying attention necessarily as well as I should be? Am I paying attention to all those signs, that stop sign? This is where people get in trouble because you've got that noise that's interfering with those messages.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
That the receiver, that the sender that's sending the message could be also, I don't know if anyone said it, I'm sorry, but maybe it's possibly screaming at the individual or talking at the individuals so that the receiver is interpreting it as this is negative, this is loud, this is noise, I'm being attacked at this point. So it's all noise. Like,
yeah, well, let's talk about what noise is.
Okay.
Noise is anything that can distract you. I think when people look at this particular model, when they look at this picture, they see it and they think, oh, like there's a loud noise going off, right? Like for me, I'm someone, if there's other noise going on, it's hard for me to hear what else is going on. The bathroom fan's on, I can't hear what's going on. You know, the neighbor's mowing, I don't know what's going on. So I think a lot of times people interpret noise as noise, but the reality is, and this is exactly what you're getting at, Marzina, noise can be anything that is distracting. If you have a headache or you're in pain and someone's trying to talk at you and tell you something, you're not paying attention to that. If you're overtired, you're not paying attention. If you just don't like whoever is communicating with you, you might not be listening as well. And that is all noise because it's a distraction. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
So noise can be like, you know, audible and actual sound, but it can also be, I have a stomach ache today and I don't feel good, so I'm just not paying attention. It can be a whole variety of things. Now, to Christina's point, yes, this is a legitimate model of communication, but it's not very realistic. It's out there. We interact with it. We have linear models of communication all the time, but I think our communication that we're used to looks more like this. This is probably more what you were used to. So analyze this picture for me. What do you see? And this is the transactional model. What do you see happening in this model? Anyone jump right in.
Like a healthy communication, because it's being reciprocated and it's being acknowledged and like message returned.
Yeah.
I feel like it is like healthy communication to a degree because the noise seems like it's still a factor in this, but yet there's an additional physical context. So what is physical context? Is that context is that still verbal? Physical to me is like touchy.
Physical
But
context.
Psychological context? Oh,
Yeah,
physical
you
up
see
there.
both
Sorry, I
of
didn't
them.
see it.
Yep. So top right is physical context. That is what is going on in the room at the same time. My daughter just came in for a minute. So that was some physical context. I'm listening to you, but she's also trying to tell me whatever it is 3-year-olds tell me, right? Psychological context, that's the whole part like, ugh, I hate this person, but I have to talk to them. You know, it's in my head, or I don't feel good today. So the point of including those in this picture is to show you how it is going to influence that communication, whether positively or negatively. Great question, though.
So physical contact is they were there physically, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been like a sexual thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I could tell.
But it also, it can be something like, you know, we're trying to talk in the middle of a church service and we shouldn't be, you know, or we're trying to talk to each other, but we're standing across the street from each other, so we're yelling, that sort of thing.
Oh, so that's still physical contact?
Absolutely.
Or when you're trying to talk to your husband and you've got terrorists that want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Don't talk about my little nieces like that. Thank you.
What, Martina?
So don't talk about my little favorite nieces like that. Thank you.
Listen. I don't negotiate with terrorists, okay?
Right? You didn't hear the banging on my office door like 10 minutes ago.
My kid
At
just
least I
like,
hope
I
you
just
didn't.
got up and ran because my little one fell in the hallway, and all of a sudden I didn't hear her fall, but I heard her just start
Scream.
screaming like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
I'm
All
gonna
right.
say-
What else do you see in this picture? We've broken down physical and psychological context. What else do you see going on?
Well, it just seems like very typical communication. You know, it's always it's I think more often than none do we have distractions around us. It's very rare that we can have a conversation or communicate without noise. With like you said,
Absolutely.
whether it's mental noise, you know, whereas I think with life being so busy, we always have noise in our head, whether we're thinking about the grocery store or what I have
Oh,
to
yeah.
do next. Or
like that white
this-
noise
there-
kind of thing.
This is just so this is a typical communication.
Mhm.
If the noise wasn't there, then it would be rare. Like it'd be weird, right? That's not. Are they even? You know, it's. I think this is very typical of how communication usually plays out.
It looks like
Absolutely.
a very like manner. I don't even know if that's a word, but like a very proper conversation. Like, oh, you see one, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? And then continue
Right,
about your
right.
day. A casual or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
go back to the original slide that I showed you when we were talking about how communication is a process with goals and it's
I was just gonna
ongoing.
say, and they're both
Yeah.
processing what their other one's saying and responding
Yep.
to it.
That's
And
the
it-
encoding and decoding.
It
Mhm.
seems like more. It seems like one is the physical person and the other one is the psychological person.
Don't think of it that way. I think, quite honestly, that that's just the only place they could put.
Oh, I'm
The,
sorry. I was
the
looking at
words.
the arrows. I was looking at the arrows and reading it wrong. So I was just like,
Oh
okay.
yeah, nope. Those are the feedback channels.
So those are the brackets are the physiological and
Would it, sorry,
no,
would
go
it
ahead.
be that the person on the right is having a hard time going over the noise, and then the person on the left is having a hard time getting through the noise? Does that make sense?
Not necessarily. I don't think that the noise stars are there for in a particular place for any reason. The only reason why they might be over here by the sender receiver, or rather the person decoding, is because this is the first communication. How are you? Fine, thank you. So like that's the first message. And so that's where the first noise would appear. But we also have to assume, you know, as this person responds and says, fine, thank you, this guy now has a bunch of noise that's going to be clouding what he or she is saying too.
Mhm.
They need
Is
to
that-
see a therapist. I don't know what's going on in here.
Say that again?
I said they need to see a psychologist, therapist, somebody. 'Cause they-
Well, realize we're looking at, it's a simple diagram, but it's something that can be used to explain me flipping off someone who cut me off on the highway, right? I'm still sending a message and that person's receiving the message. And my channel happens to be nonverbal in that case. Or it can be, a diagram representing a lifelong relationship with someone and that communication. So they're trying to take those two polar opposites and really condense them into, here's the pattern, here's how it flows. All right, couple key things with transactional model. Click, come on, you can do it. Multi-way communication, we already said this. This is more realistic, where one person's talking and the other person's talking, the other person's talking and back and forth, and people are cutting each other off. It's noisier. And that's where I think in this picture, you see more of those noise stars. Again, I don't want you to read too much into where they're placed in this picture, because quite honestly, they can be throughout. They really, truly can. But a conversation like this, it's more realistic, but there's more opportunity for distraction. And think about your personal lives and your relationships. You're distracted. There's a lot going on. Even if there's not something going on right now in your space, there's a lot going on. And as of course, this is more common. This is how people really communicate much more than that linear model. All right. All right. I'm going to come back to this slide because I skipped one before, and I want you please to think now about miscommunication. All right, we've talked about communication, we've talked about the channels, we've talked about the patterns. I want now for you to give me examples of miscommunication. And just throw them right into the chat window. What does it look like when we miscommunicate? Oops. And I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second because I can't see. Oh no. Can you guys still hear me? All right, I got a message that my internet was struggling. Someone's tone. Okay, so yeah, what are examples of miscommunication? Like, what has happened to you when someone miscommunicated or there was miscommunication?
Professor, did you ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
What was the question?
Give me examples, put them in the chat, but give me examples of miscommunication. What happens? What do you see when?
My mom. No, no.
Sure, go for it.
In the chat, Professor, not in the cloud.
I didn't catch that last thing. I'm not sure what someone said.
You said you wanted them in the chat, not in the cloud.
Yes, please.
Okay, when you're typing them in the cloud.
So I'm looking for more specific examples. Marzina, you actually sent me a direct message there, but you said my mother. So like more specific without, getting too gory. Late to an event. Great example, Christina. Yeah. Misunderstanding what someone is trying to say. I saw up above. Lack of understanding, missed appointment. Someone's tone was a great one. So take another second or another minute and give me some other things. Offensive language, one-sided. I'll throw one in there too. I'm thinking about it. Hurt feelings. Okay. Oh, breakup. That's a good one too. All right, so we're going to hold on to that for just a second. And divorce, another great example. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoints. I can find it. There we go. Share screen, PowerPoints. All right, so where this is important, where I'm asking you to give me examples of miscommunication is where we're looking at effective communication. What does it mean to communicate effectively? And I know my computer's taking a second to load here. Not on the same page. Okay. Defensive, two-parent, different households, different opinions. Okay, so we've got some great ones there. Hang on, this is not cooperating now. Is that fun? There we go. I apologize, it's going to be a little bit smaller, but you'll be able to see it still. All right, interpersonal channels of communication. Effective communication depends on three things. First of all, you've got the richness of communication, all right? And that comes down to the quality and the number of channels that you use. How rich is your communication? Think, for example, there's that old joke of someone's on the phone with someone else and they don't want to have that conversation. So they say, oh, I'm going into a tunnel. And they start like hitting the phone and hitting their mouths and, oh, I can't, oh, up, breaking, you know, and they're pretending that they're breaking up. There's that richness of communication there, okay? If you lose cell coverage or if you get bumped out of Zoom, suddenly we're not going to have that same rich communication. Another one is immediacy. How interested are you in communicating with someone else? There we go. Now you can see it better. Quite honestly, there are some people that you just don't want to talk to. Doesn't matter what the topic is, doesn't matter, you know, what you need from them or vice versa, the relationship, you just don't want to talk to those people. All right. Teenagers come to mind, right? You try to tell them something and they don't listen because they're not necessarily interested in communicating with you. And then the last one is synchronicity, and that has to do with the timeliness of the communication. How recent was the communication? If someone texts me something on, that happened to me the other day, I got some text messages last Tuesday, my phone didn't tell me about them. And then I found them this Monday and was mortified because almost a full week had gone by. And so the effectiveness of that communication was just not there. Okay, so effective communication depends on richness of communication, immediacy, and synchronicity. Now, I asked you a few moments ago to throw in the chat box information for me about different types of miscommunication. So let's take a look at some of those. Hopefully you can still see the chat. I don't know if you can see it on my end here, but you should be able to see it on your screen. You should open up the chat, but you can see. And in this case, I invite you to unmute and to jump in, but let's take a look at some of these and figure out what the problem with that miscommunication is as it applies to these three principles. So Amanda came up with someone's tone, okay? And Amanda, jump in if I'm misrepresenting you here. What I understand from that is sometimes you're talking to someone and they're using a tone or you're using a tone and it's not appreciated. And people get,
Exactly.
you know, upset about it. Am I on the right page?
Yes, and then they get defensive, and then attitude comes along, and then sometimes it could
God.
escalate more. So,
So
yeah.
you've been in my house. Okay. All right.
I think the
So in that case, which of these three is lacking? Is it richness of communication, immediacy, or synchronicity? And I'm not saying Amanda per se, I'm calling on anyone.
Richness of communication, probably,
How so?
because it's the quality of your communication, and because of the tone, it can be misinterpreted.
Yeah,
So the communication channel isn't high quality, I guess.
sure. Any
I-
other
I think-
thoughts?
I think lack of tone can also be, so for instance, like when someone texts something to you, there is lack of tone in there, so you have to kind of assume tone.
Yeah,
Therefore interprets into miscommunication. If you mean it in one tone, text it in one tone. And like I always say, like you can text "I love you" to 5 different people and mean it in 5 different ways.
right.
Because of lack of tone.
Yep. Along those lines, I always think about that dreaded text. When you just get K, the letter K, that's it. That too. Go ahead.
There's an assumed tone to that. Like if somebody puts K, right, there's an assumed tone by the majority
Yeah.
that you don't care, right?
Yep.
Or whatever.
So what we're getting at without actually saying it is it's also impacted by immediacy. So your tone, absolutely, it's that quality, it's that richness, but it's also immediacy. All right. Misunderstanding what someone is trying to say. Jasmine said it, but I think someone else had that later on too. What do we think? Why is that? Why is that a problem? Where is that coming from?
I mean, it could
I guess that
be,
could mean the way you say. Oh, I'm sorry. The way you say it.
I didn't see who was talking first. My window was covering it.
I said I think that could go by like the way someone says something. You could take that the wrong way.
Mhm. So what do we think? Is that richness, immediacy, synchronicity?
I think that's richness, because if you're talking about apples and this person's talking about bananas, like you're not
Sure.
talking about the same thing.
You're not on the same page. Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say definitely the quality. All right. How about body language?
Me. So it's like you're saying one thing, but your body's saying completely different. Like I'll
Mhm.
never forget when I went into a manager's meeting once and I sat there with my arms crossed like this, and I didn't think anything of it. But my district manager was, "Court, can you uncross your arms? Because it looks like you're automatically defensive, and what you're saying and what your body's saying are two different things." So I could be like, "Yeah, I had a great time," or "Yeah, I had a great time." You know what I
Tell
mean?
your
They're
face.
two completely different things,
Right.
but you're saying the same thing at one time. And I think that would go to um immediacy. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Immediacy.
Think
that one.
immediate, like immediate
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's also going to be some extent of richness too.
I was gonna say that
Absolutely.
too.
I'm going to scroll by defensive for just a second. I feel like with defensive, that is more, there is communication, but that's more behavior. That's more of a reaction that you're going to get to the perceived communication. Both my husband and my daughter were just in a foul mood last night, which was just a barrel of fun for me, right? And both of them, because they were in a bad mood, they projected that defensive attitude. That wasn't necessarily what they were communicating, but their reaction to whatever was frustrating them. Late to an event is a great one. Richness of communication, immediacy, synchronicity. How does that? How does that affect being late to an event?
The synchron.
Synchronicity?
Yeah, that one. I apparently do not know the English language today. Because it just shows, I think it's actually all of them,
Mhm.
because the synchronicity, obviously, because you're not on time, but the immediate one, I'm just going to use that, that
Yep.
word, because it shows how uninterested you are by showing up late, but like in richness, it shows, oh, but I showed up, but I'm not really invested. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes
And
sense.
let's make that even more confusing and frustrating. What if someone told you the wrong time,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
Or someone else messed up and you're late to the event. Same thing. It's going to be impacted by a lot of those different, well, really all three of those different principles.
Yeah, we have to tell my Aunt Amy, who's late for everything. And I'm not talking like half an hour. She's like 2 hours late to everything. So we
Yeah,
tell her 2 hours prior, and then everybody else knows that it's 2 hours later. So if we
that's
set something up
funny.
for 1 o'clock, Auntie Amy's invite says 11.
11.
Mhm.
That's great.
She'll be right on time.
All right, let's see. I put in hurt feelings. My husband and I we're both very strong personalities, and so we'll bounce off each other a lot. And then we're both feeling hurt and defensive, and then the communication breaks down, because my feelings are hurt, but his feelings are hurt, but both of our feelings are hurt. But where do you get stuck there? I think that breaks into the breakup and the divorce examples that I see here as well. Same thing, richness of communication. There's that noise. If you are upset with someone, if you're frustrated with someone, you're just not going to communicate as well. The quality is not going to be as good. The famous question, how are you? What's up? I'm fine, right? There's quality right there. But it's also the immediacy. I don't want to talk to you because my feelings are hurt. And when we and I'm just saying we, generally speaking, not necessarily my relationship, but generally speaking, when we let things fester, they always say don't go to bed angry, or solve the problem before it gets worse. You really see that in the synchronicity. You really see you can solve the problem a little bit easier sometimes when you deal with it sooner. Not every time, but sooner. All right. Did we miss any here? Sense of emergency. Talk to us about that one, Courtney. What do you mean?
It was more of like the teenager thing,
Mhm.
and it just shows that you can, if they're texting on their phone while you're speaking to them, there's no interest in what that person is communicating to you, so there's no sense of emergency to listen, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You mean when I ask my 3-year-old, do you want pineapple or mango with your dinner? And she doesn't answer me because she doesn't care and she's doing something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Teenager. Got it. All right. So great examples. And you can see, we can apply these to any sort of miscommunication, any sort of communicative experience. These 3 key things, richness of communication, immediacy, synchronicity, are really going to impact everything. The one thing that I want to just highlight really quickly, because we kind of glossed over it, where it says the number of channels that you need to use. Whoops, let's go back for a second. Where it says the number of channels that you need to use, I just want to reiterate, when we're talking about that, there we go. What we're referring to is how you are communicating with other people. For example, as we started class, I texted everyone, not this week, but last week. I texted everyone. I posted announcements in Blackboard. I put a lot of stuff in Blackboard, and then I fired messages to your emails as well. So there are 3 different channels that I used to communicate with you to get you squared away for class last Thursday. And then I can't really pick on Arlise because she's not with us tonight. She actually joined my Zoom room during one of my office hours too. by accident. And so I was able to say, oh, here, let me give you some more information. So it was like just a fourth channel, a fourth way for me to communicate that information to her. So for us, a lot of times more effective communication happens because we've communicated something using different channels and using different ways. And it's kind of an argument about why texting really always backfires for us too. All right. All right. We looked at those. What is the most effective form of communication? I said this last week. I'm going to say this again throughout the entire semester. Communication is contextual. It really, truly is. And so there is not going to be one most effective form of communication. There's only going to be the most effective form of communication for that particular context, that particular situation. I'm going to throw Christina out there for a second. She was trying to log into Zoom and I was texting her at the same time, but also trying to communicate with all of you via Zoom. I didn't have the ability at that time to pick up the phone and call her, right? I have the ability at that time to really send her a detailed email. So I found that texting was the most effective form of communication in that situation. Other cases, all right, someone in your family passes, you're not going to text it, right? You're going to get a phone call or you're going to get an in-person message, something like that. The other thing to consider with communication is it is governed by culture. Our communication is highly, highly cultural, and it's very specific to the way we were raised, what we, think about, the way we behave. And so we're really going to focus on that next week about how communication is cultural. All right. Any thoughts on that before I move on? Questions?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
Miscommunication can easily happen when two different people receive communication differently. So for always saying how I'm a visual person, right? Or
Yep.
I'm a person of action. So you can say many, many words to me, but until I see it, sometimes I don't understand it, right?
Sure.
So I guess a lot of miscommunication can happen because two people just don't communicate the same way or receive communication the same way.
Absolutely. And I'm looking behind me because I'm trying to think if I've got the book over there. Chapter 9 focuses on romantic relationships. And I'm trying to pull together some resources for us on the 5 love languages. Is anyone familiar with that? You are? Yeah, there you go. So 5 love languages, essentially, each one of us has some preferences, ways that we feel loved and respected. And this is the theory behind this, and I'm not sure how scientific it is. I need to do some research into it. But the theory behind this is if I'm someone who feels love by acts of service, right? If I don't get that from my partner, then I'm frustrated. I don't feel as loved as I could. But when he drops stuff and starts picking up and vacuuming and doing things I need him to do, there's a different communication there. So I think that's what you're getting at, Christina. Yeah. So I'm hoping to throw that in with chapter 9 when we get there. It's in a few more weeks. I think that's in July, the 3rd week of July. All right. So what I'd like to do is take a few minutes and just go over a homework assignment that you have. And then we're going to jump into those 5 principles of communication from last week. And I asked you to do a PowerPoint. So what I did today was I went through and I pulled your PowerPoints out of Blackboard, and I'm in the wrong link. Hold on here. I pulled your PowerPoints out of Blackboard and put them into another PowerPoint, essentially. So give me just a second to open up in MindTap. And I do want you to be prepared to take a minute and talk about what you shared for your picture. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen again. I know I keep doing that back and forth on you. This is in MindTap. I'm looking at the first person video activity. And I know a couple people have looked at this and completed this assignment already. I'm wondering if yeah. Nope, it's not letting me do that. Give me just a second. I'm trying to see if I can get sound going for you too. Share sound. There we go. All right, I'm gonna hit play. And this is not playing.
Different format today. It is a holiday after
Can
all.
you hear her okay?
You viewers have shared so much with me. So here's a little bit of my life away from college. It's time for a big feast in a little bit. Say hi.
Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear her? Oh, good. Okay, thanks. I did it right.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Ugh. Dad, make her turn it off.
Hi, everyone. It's about time for us to eat, so let's make this quick, Lucy.
Hey, Alex, get in here.
What's up, Lucy's friends?
He's the cutest.
I hope everybody's ready to share what they're grateful for.
Aunt Julie is trying to get me to post with a family hashtag, big family fun. I don't know what a hashtag is. How do I even post with a hashtag? What does that even mean?
Guys, dinner's gonna be ready in 10 minutes, and I wanna go around and say what everybody's thankful for. Guys, everyone put the screens down and pay attention. I am grateful that the whole family's here together. Lucy, it's good to have you home from college, sweetheart. And I need you to turn that thing off, too. We're here for family time.
All right, so that is your first video vignette. I know a couple of you have watched it already, but that's essentially what you're going to be doing with those video activities. They're always really short, no more than 2 minutes. But you see, that basic family structure working together. And then after you watch that video, let me just put that down for a second. There we go. These questions appeared on the side, all right? And that's essentially what you're going to be doing with these video vignettes. Watch them and then answer the questions. There are always going to be 3 questions, so you want to make sure that you scroll down. Here's the first one. Listen, using specific examples from the video, what can we tell about the communication climate among the family members? And I'm going to tell you right away, communication climate is a word that is important in the textbook. You can find it as like a keyword in the textbook. Scrolling down a little bit more, what intentional and unintentional messages, same thing. I'm looking specifically for what did Lucy mean to communicate? What did Lucy not mean to communicate? And then the last question here has to do with Lucy's father. And you're looking at what content and relational messages he communicates in his speech to everyone. Okay, so these are open-ended. I'm looking for about a paragraph. Sometimes people like run with it and give it a little bit more, and that's always going to be good. But that's essentially what you're going to be doing for these particular activities. Would it help you to take? What's up?
Was this due last week?
Nope, this is due this next Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep. This is due next Wednesday
Where
since we
would I
moved the dates.
find what each of those things means, like the communication climate?
That you can find in the textbook.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
oh good, it's still open. You can see I just opened up the book on the side here. And it takes a second to load, but you'll be able to open up chapter 1 and find it in there.
This is in our Blackboard.
This is in MindTap.
Don't know what that is.
Table of contents, chapter 1. And then I think I showed this to you last week. You can click and you can find the different parts of the chapter there. Okay.
I guess I'll ask you later what MindTap is.
Yep, like we talked tonight about models of communication, linear and transactional. Last week, we talked about the principles of communication, 1 through 5. And then here it's talking about different channels. All right, so you can find those things in there.
What is MindTap, Professor? Where do I find MindTap?
Oh, Christina, you and I need to chat. We're not there yet.
Okay, perfect.
I thought you were Marzina. That's why I wasn't giving you a lot of A lot of detail there. Yeah, you and I will chat about it. Okay. So I'm going to close this for now, but that is the basic assignment for MindTap video thing. And then you have the quiz and then the flip grid as well. Does this make sense, everyone? What you're doing with this assignment? Give me a thumbs up, please. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I grade these. So where Blackboard yells at you, it's going to always be about these because I tend to wait until everyone does them and then grade them all at once because it's just easier to do all of them all at once. So I grade them and then I'll put that grade into MindTap and then it'll be communicated to Blackboard. All right. All right, let's do this. I am going to stop recording now. I'm going to stop sharing.